If you're an online merchant and you offer subscriptions, then listen up. I will give you 3 tips on how to ensure that you will make 10% more money from your subscriptions and that you will retain your customers for longer. So if you're selling any product with a subscription, one key metric that you have is LTV. You hear this all the time, LTV, which is customer lifetime value. So the longer that you have the customer in your recurring subscription, the higher your LTV is, which is obviously very beneficial. If you're ever looking to sell your business or to make your business a desirable asset, having a long LTV is very, very important. Now, the longer you can keep a customer on a subscription, the higher your LTV, which means higher profits as well. So keeping a current customer is obviously a lot cheaper than acquiring a new one, especially with the costs of traffic. So if you can keep customers in your sphere for longer, you will end up winning hands down. So I will give you 3 tips on how you can increase your LTV by 10% guaranteed. So the first one is super simple. A lot of merchants that we work with here at Direct Paynet come to us looking for a merchant account, and they didn't know with their past provider that they can add this. So we ensure to tell all our merchants that they activate VAU and MAU. What that is Visa account updater and MasterCard account updater. Now, this is a very simple thing to do. Most gateways and most payment service providers have this available. It's just literally a flag that you turn on in your gateway, and boom, you're good to go. What Visa account updater is and MasterCard account updater is basically when there's a card that is expired or a customer has changed their card information, it gets automatically updated into your gateway and you are able to continue rebilling that customer and you get their new card information. So, I mean, I don't need to tell you why this is huge. It costs usually $1 or less, depending on your service provider. And obviously if your subscription is $50, $100 or, $200 or whatever, this is just, a no-brainer. Adding this will ensure, at least a couple of percent of more conversions for you every month for cards not expiring and not having old card records. People update their cards all the time these days, whether they change because they've been frauded from another merchant or anything like that. So this is a really valuable tool for any subscription merchant. And like I said, it takes 2 minutes. You can call your payment service provider if you can't find the flag and you just turn it on. And within a couple of months, obviously, you're going to start seeing the fruits of your labor by turning that feature on. Now, the second tip I want to tell you about is the Visa and MasterCard network tokens. Tokenization and data protection are all the rage these days in the credit card processing world. Right now in Europe, data protection, data privacy is a huge thing with GDPR and all the other privacy rules. In the US, they're also doing the same thing. They're looking at ways to protect cardholder data and credit card data and avoid fraud. So anytime you can provide a more secure environment for cardholder data, it's always a benefit. Payment processors, banks, financial institutions are all trying to keep data secure. So in comes Visa and MasterCard with a new protocol for tokenizing customer credit card information. How this works is instead of using a vault or tokenizing through your CRM, the gateway sends the transaction information, the customer transaction information to Visa directly, and Visa tokenizes it and gives a unique token number that is then stored in the gateway and used for future billings, for example, subscription. So why does that work better? Because this token is coming directly from Visa and MasterCard. So when your customer's bank sees that this is a network token, meaning Visa or MasterCard has authorized this token, it is a more trusted token than other tokens you may provide, and it increases your approval rate. Now, Visa is saying that this increases approval rates by 3%, and it also reduces fraud and chargebacks by 26%. So not only are you going to make more money, you are also going to prevent losses from chargebacks and perhaps refunds as a side benefit. So this is, again, it's a no-brainer. If you are already tokenizing data, then you can simply move to Visa or MasterCard network tokens. Not all providers offer this. You can also contact my team at Direct Paynet. We have a solution that you can plug and play with your current processing solution in order to start accepting network tokens. If, for example, your tech stack does not allow for network tokens, because there are some providers that are able to support this, some that are not. at least using a vault and tokenizing data with a provider, whether it's your CRM or your gateway, is still going to be better than not doing anything. So sending untokenized data will result in higher declines for subscriptions because the customer's bank sees this as less secure. You're not being a responsible merchant. You are not sending tokenized data. And also you're not sending the CVV with a recurring transaction. And if it's not tokenized, that's seen also as a negative thing by a card issuer or the customer's bank. So my third tip for you to recover more revenue from your subscriptions is attempting failed transactions. So many offer owners use what's known as a decline salvage tool. It's basically a software with some rules and some AI built in order to attempt failed recurring transaction. This sounds awesome. Obviously, why wouldn't you attempt to recoup some of the failed transactions? And I agree, it is definitely a very good service and it does have some very big benefits for subscription merchants. Although you do have to put some guidelines in place with these service providers to ensure that they don't actually hurt your conversion rate, because there are some service providers that do have some less, I wouldn't say ethical processes, but less desirable processes to capture as much money as they can from your subscription. Because keep in mind, these service providers are getting paid by the percentage that they recover. So they don't really, for example, ensure that your costs remain low or you're not upsetting your customer's bank and so forth. They're really working on capturing as much as possible for you so they can get a percentage of that. So I'm not saying that all service providers are bad. You just have to really interview them and really ask them what their practices are and how they take care of this and what they do and in order to recover your subscription. So when using a decline salvage service, it is important to limit the number of times that you try per month. So ideally you maximize the attempts to 3 or 4 per month per failed transaction. Now, many service providers actually try up to 12 times a month. I've seen even 15 times a month to recoup a transaction, which obviously I don't need to tell you. You get charged a transaction fee for every attempt that you try. You're sending this transaction 12 or 15 times to the customer's bank. So you are, potentially ruining a relationship with an issuing bank if they think that you are abusing this customer by trying to rebill him. And obviously, if you attempt 10 times for a transaction, the 11th time it's successful, this transaction is more likely to charge back or refund, or you're selling a subscription basically to somebody who doesn't want it or can't afford it, obviously, because you're not able to capture the money. So keep that in mind, that number of attempts should be limited, and you should try to strategically choose when to reattempt. For example, the first of the month is a good time of the month to try to capture it, because a lot of people get paid at the end of the month and they have more money at the beginning of the month. So if you try a couple of times during the month and you're unsuccessful, try to schedule your next attempt on the first of the month to see if you have a better chance at recouping that transaction. Visa actually is going to input some rules. They've been talking about it for a while, and the rumor is growing and growing, and now it's pretty much set. And I think we're going to hear about it in sometime in 2024, that Visa is going to limit the amount of times that you can attempt a failed transaction. For merchants who don't abide by what Visa asks, what happens is that they start getting banned by issuing banks. So for example, JP Morgan and the big guys, they're going to have algorithms in place to see that if you're trying 10, 12 times for a transaction, they're going to start banning you from sending transactions to them. So you need to pay attention to these things, and you can't just ignore and decide to do what you would like to do, right? You need to follow these things to ensure that you maximize your front-end conversion and also obviously your subscription conversions as well. Now, the last thing I'm going to say about this decline service that you really need to be careful about, you need to ensure that the service provider that you're going to work with is only going to attempt transactions with specific decline messages. For example, if you get a message that says lost or stolen card, or something called a pickup card is a message that means stolen card, you do not want to reattempt those transactions, because the customer's bank saying, hey, this card is stolen or this card has been declared lost, and you're trying and trying and trying again, what you're doing is you're sending a signal that, hey, I don't care, I just want to get the money and I'm not a responsible merchant. So you need to ensure that you do not send reattempts for transactions that are lost or stolen. And, bonus tip here is make sure you don't do that for initial front-end transactions either. Anytime a card, you get the response back that it's been lost or stolen, you want to not try that card again. Obviously, mistakes happen and you could do it here and there, but you don't want to do it often because that's how it gets you banned by specific issuers and increases your decline rate, basically. So what I'm saying, just to kind of summarize this whole decline salvage thing, is that it is a good service. It does help increase your subscription revenue, and you should use it, or you should try to put in some rules in your CRM or your rebilling mechanism, trying to recoup some of the failed attempts for rebills. But make sure that you follow the steps that I mentioned above and that you don't get caught in a cycle of endless attempts and fees for each of these endless attempts that basically can counter all the gains that you make from the salvage that you have. Now, I know I told you I would give you 3 tips, but I love to give you guys extra bonus tips. And this is basically for merchants who have non-domestic transactions. So a lot of merchants who are selling in the US or in Europe, do have some cross-border, meaning they have 5 or 10% or sometimes more of their sales that come from international markets. Now, sometimes these markets can be significant, meaning, if you have 5 or 10% of sales that are coming from a specific market with a major currency like the pound or the euro or Canadian dollar, Australian dollar, and so forth. A lot of service providers are now charging in the local currency because that actually increases your conversion rate. So charging, for example, Brits in the pound will increase your conversion rate. So that's awesome. But what I'm going to tell you is do not charge in dynamic currency. So if you have a subscription, for example, $30 US dollars a month, and you use dynamic currency, that amount will change every month because the currency conversion will always change what 30 US dollars is equivalent to in pounds. Now, for you as a merchant, you may want to guarantee a certain amount of US dollars that you're going to make for the sale. For the customer, if they're seeing an amount that's constantly fluctuating for a subscription and they don't know what to expect, that can cause frustration, that can cause more questions into your customer service team, that can cause chargebacks, and obviously that can cause them to cancel. So if you can, for some of your, top 2, 3, or 5 markets on the international front, you can revisit the price maybe every 3 months, depending on where we're at with foreign exchange. But what you want to do is you want to pick a price in these currencies. For example, $30, you decide it's 25 GBP and you charge that. And that way your customer will have the same user experience as your US customers, or vice versa. If you're across the pond in Europe and you're selling to Americans, you want to do the same thing. You always want to try to keep things even for all your customers so they can all enjoy the same consumer experience with your product or service. Now, if you have any questions, please let me know down below. I'm always dying to hear what you guys have to say about my content and anything that I can clarify to help make you more money. And as usual, I want you to try these things out or implement a couple of these things and reach out to me and let me know how it goes. I love to hear results and I love to hear updates from everybody listening on how things are going in your business. Follow me for more great tips. And if you need some help with your merchant services, please contact Direct Payment. The link is down below, and looking forward to hearing from you soon.